welcome back to another episode of Sync Riffs. My name is Charles Levan, LA-based sync agent. Want to welcome to the studio two very special guests from the Masterworks Alliance, Kyle Biane and Wendy Williams. Good morning, guys. How's it going?
Hey, how are you?
It's going good.
Doing good. No complaints. We're in sunny LA. It's a Friday, and we're working in the industry we love so much. But want to unpack and really invite you guys to tell us about Masterworks Alliance. On screen, I'm looking at a beautiful article that was in Variety, and I'll read the headline: Musicians behind The Mandalorian and Jurassic World launch a new trailer music agency, Masterworks Alliance. And so excited because you're really going to be able to break things down in the next hour, a masterclass, if you will, on the world of film and music, film trailers. So tell us more about the formation of the company, and we'll hop right into it and how that looks.
Okay, so really, this was not something that we were considering even 6 months ago. I think that it doesn't even apply to strictly just straight trailers. I think it applies to all licensing when I say that we got a pretty double 1-2 hit with COVID that coupled with immediate strikes. And so depending on where you were in that production process is really when you got hit. But no matter what, you got hit. And so everyone is trying to ride a wave that allows them to remain creative, but also allows them to keep their IP. So no one is taking jobs for desperation, because we all know that that is not what keeps people, and especially composers and writers, inspired. And we all know that we want to maintain this community. So we have to sort of come together in some sort of collaboration to the publishers maintain their IP. Mm-hmm. However, they're able to get the resources that they need, and we can come together. We can unite in this community. And that's how this started. And it was really just to kind of keep things together until we can figure out entertainment, especially from a marketing standpoint, just because it's up in the air. And that's kind of where we find ourselves, I guess.
Yes, and Wendy, to thread that correct, I know you're a seasoned business executive with a proven track record. You had worked at, if you want to tell us, 12 Titans Music. You were the head of business affairs there, and how your path, meeting Kyle, and then I know you have two other co-founder, lead composer, David Travis Edwards, and then John Samuel Hansen. So sort of how did that come about, working with Kyle, and then take us there on that journey?
Well, nothing about this was actually, like, I should say, it was thought out. It was planned. Everything just happened very quickly in every scenario. 12 Titans was happened very quickly. And even MWA happened quickly. And it was simply just because, we probably undershot that one. I'm going to be completely honest with you. We probably should have given ourselves a little bit more time, but we thought we could do it. And so that was the goal. And here we are. So I wish I had a better answer in that scenario.
Okay.
We knew that this was a need, and especially between our companies, it had to happen. And we wanted to make it happen. And especially we knew we weren't the only ones in this scenario.
Amazing. Carpe diem, as we say. And that is a great segue, because Kyle, I know you were both a music producer and a score mixer, and some of your past work, an amazing resume, if you will, everything from Star Wars to Ferrari. Tell us more about and I was looking at some of your earlier works back in 2017. If you want to talk us through some of your earlier works and yeah, unpack that.
Yeah, so Confidential Music is the publishing entity that me and my business partner John Hansen, now one of the other co-founders of MWA, we came together in 2012 doing that. And it was kind of one of those things. We were in our young 20s looking to kind of cut our teeth in the music business and trying to figure out where we fit in. And we stumbled upon this company called Immediate Music that was kind of one of the tent poles or pillars of trailer music. They were one of the first to do it, and that's where I met John. So we came together there, and we kind of fell in love with this art form that is trailer music. And trailer music's a fun thing because we produce all sorts of music, both for fun and professionally. But trailer music is cool because it's it has a very specific purpose. It's always asking a question. It's always pushing forward. And if you work within those rules, there are no other rules in that. The genres are infinite. The sounds are infinite. What you can do, you really can have infinite fun with, as long as you stay within this kind of always push forward mentality, which is exciting music to make outright. Yeah. So, John and I kind of found ourselves, and John Hansen is a very, very talented trailer composer and really found his voice in writing that style. And then me as the mixer producer, kind of yin to that yang, came together. And starting in 2012, we got really lucky to be a part of some really, really cool campaigns and do some really fun stuff. And I think David Edwards kind of has a similar kind of coming up into the trailer world, and 12 Titans wasn't far off. We were within a year or so of each other founding back in the day. And we're able to take part in the industry when it was really thriving. There was a really awesome kind of the good old days that we got to be a part of trailer music. The Marvel stuff really going off, the Star Wars stuff really going off,
Well, you're getting into a lot of trailer history.
Yeah, that is exactly. Yeah,
getting into some trailer history, if that's what your fans want to know. But that's exactly what we were doing.
And so kind of as now we're all both 12 Titans and Confidential Music are over a decade old. We've been doing this for quite some time, and we saw Masterworks Alliance as a cool opportunity to take our knowledge and our industry contacts and all that stuff and bring it together and be able to bring on younger people to the roster to be able to go out and hopefully find the next 12 Titans and find the next Confidential Music. And that allows us to take our knowledge and apply it to the next group of artists coming up in this genre. And it both allows Confidential Music and 12 Titans to stay true to what we believe we're good at, and we don't have to chase trends and move like that. We can find people that are operating in the new genres that are emerging in the industry and bring them under the umbrella. So it's kind of a cool way to make this new entity that has a way to kind of stay evergreen, if you will.
100%. And Wendy and Kyle, to thread that needle, because at the top of the episode, Wendy, you hit it spot on with all the existential threats that the industry is facing. And I think what really encapsulates a core tenet of Masterworks Alliance, and I'll let you guys correct me if I'm wrong, but if you want to touch on sort of that key point that you really enable and empower publishers to reach their full potential on focusing on music creation and not worrying and getting bogged down by marketing and administrative tasks. So tell us more about that. And then if you want to thread the needle, Kyle, because you touched on sort of the difference between working on a trailer and film scoring. There's a difference when it comes to mixing for those two elements, but I'm throwing it out a couple points and would love to turn the mic to you guys to extrapolate on that.
Juxtaposition. Okay. Say that again for me. Which one from the business side do you want?
Sure. So on the business side, so that publishers can focus on the creative and not worry about the administrative and the marketing aspect. That's something that you strive for in this new business endeavor?
Yes. Okay, so let me kind of take you back a little bit.
Sure.
To be innovative, you will have to find passive income in the licensing area of which you reside. And it doesn't matter if you are an artist or if you are a composer. Now, that's a can that we can sort of like, I said that, now we're going to sort of set it over here. Because you also have to embrace what is happening in the entertainment industry. I like to tell the guys, you have to understand, if entertainment was a car, we're only a part of the wheel, and we're actually the cog in the wheel. So you have to understand everything's got to fit to where we fit in.
Yeah.
So keep writing as though you are going to land the biggest, and let's go to like Lord of the Rings, the first one trailer. Like, that is what you're writing for. You're writing for the biggest theatrical piece. And the reason is because that is what is going to keep your composers engaged, inspired. However, while things are settling out in a business sense, there are other avenues passively that will maintain them financially while we settle this entertainment, I dare say, tsunami of a roller coaster that we're like, which one? I mean, because what we're really talking about is financial instability, and if it is financially stable or financially possible to maintain a job in entertainment from a musical standpoint.
Yeah.
And the answer is yes.
And then, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, spot on. I had a music supervisor and a publisher on a previous episode, and he touched on exactly that, Wendy. One half of the day-to-day, whether you're an artist or composer, is the creative, but the back end, quote, buttoning up your business side, publishing, admin. Are your songs registered with your PRO? I'm a sync agent, so a lot of independent artists I work with, I find, that is an aspect that's not even on their radar, making sure all those things are buttoned up.
And if I may do a shameless plug for MWA, that is more of the reason as to why it was created. Because what a lot of composers think that they're going to be able to do is, hey, I'm giving 50% of everything that I write to this company, and they're going to pay me. And instead of, this is on the publishers as well as a lot of, I dare say, just disconnect between creatives and the industry. However, there's a lot of, I'm going to do this. Why am I not making money? You guys are not doing your jobs. And that's just not where we are anymore.
Yes.
And that's also why we came together, and we don't even take 50, we take 20, because we assume that we only sign publishers. We don't sign writers. Okay. So that we assume that you are going to continue to operate as a publishing company the way that you want to. Because a lot of people don't understand administrative costs, especially depending on the state in which you're in. I can get into the weeds.
Sure.
And and on that,
I'll get in the weeds. Sorry.
Let's get in the weeds.
That's what we're here for.
We got time. Talking about silly business, like silly business stuff.
This is the music business. It is
silly business. But it is. But they could open a candle shop, and they could have the exact same obligations. What I was just saying is, most people aren't recognizing this when they go into it, and they also don't recognize the fact that sales and registrations and keeping up on all of this is a full-time job. So if you're going to start your own publishing entity, boutique or not, just know that everything that takes you away from creating music takes you away. I mean, I need the creatives to understand, like, there is a give and take there. So that's why that's also why MWA is so beneficial. We understand. We're going to do it for you.
And I would say, Wendy, because I get that a lot from artists who, I've been in Sync as an agent since 2002, and I'll tell them, trust the process. When I started, there were a handful of agents back then, and now more than ever, there's no shortage of music, and literally sometimes getting a sync placement feels like we're winning a lottery ticket. And like you said, we're here in Los Angeles. It's about the relationships, but quoting, I had Deva Anderson interviewing her the other day from the Playtone Company. She said the creative has to meet the needs of the showrunners, directors. What's best for the picture? It's not about, let's serve the need. Sure, frontline artists, they're getting calls from Chapel Roan, and at the end of the day, there's the budget, there's the creative, and what's best for the project. And I think that's a great through line, because Kyle, if you want to touch on,
well, no, he gets mad at me all the time because I keep reminding him there's a difference between being an artist and being in writing for sync. If you're writing for an artist, if you're an artist, you're writing for your fans. If you are writing for a project or anything else, please understand you are a tool. So remove good and bad. Does it work or doesn't it?
Yeah, I kind of see trailer music like to put it with an analogy, it's kind of like you're making a race car. You're not making a car to sell to the general public. You're not making a Ferrari that you want, to drive up PCH with. You're making a purpose-driven piece of music that is going to serve a purpose. And you don't need any other bells and whistles on it other than exactly what your client's asking for to win the proverbial race. That is that sync lottery you're talking about.
Yeah.
So,
and at the end of the day, it's get folks in the theaters, buy that ticket, see that theatrical film. Because similarly, I've talked to music soups on the trailer side, and yeah, if it's all about selling the film, selling whatever might be streaming direct to these streamers. But yeah, great points there.
We are not in the business of selling to fans, although that is becoming more of a thing. Like when I talk about passive income, that's in that bucket. But from a sync standard, this isn't your opus. This is what you can do in the best possible time that you have.
Yeah.
And you are also competing with the best possible people that have been doing this for the longest time. And I would like to emphasize, because I know that I speak directly, if you don't know how to stack your samples, you will automatically be like, you have to understand that you're competing with people that know how to make their orchestral samples sound live. So if you don't know how to stack your samples, you're at a loss. If you're not making sure that your production is on point, especially now, because you only have 3 seconds, guys. Sorry.
Yeah, no, you're exactly. It's very purpose-driven music.
I get passionate.
Yeah,
no.
I'm so sorry.
And that I think that there's something kind of cool in speaking on the production side of trailer music, that the purpose behind it, because it's a challenge, and it's like I was kind of referring to that set of rules, but that sometimes rules and creativity I find really make you come up with some very cool stuff. Sometimes the vacuum of space, being able to do anything else, can be paralyzing, where trailer music, you really get to your target you're aiming at. And to Wendy's point, there's a lot of kind of tips and tricks that have been evolved over the years, become standards, things that you have to do to compete. And we've been lucky enough to be around this for long enough to be part of some of those things coming up and the different sounds that have emerged. I mean, we all remember the Inception Brahm kind of thing, and how that kind of started this signature sound obsession.
Dubstep summer of 2008.
Oh boy, yeah, exactly.
It was an exciting time.
Yeah,
all of us.
All the way up through the covers and the remixes that we're hearing a lot of now, and that this all watching those rules and expectations of the art form change and trying to stick with it, kind of thing, and adapt and evolve with it. Well, not chasing trends, because you can't chase this stuff. You got to kind of find a voice, and when the zeitgeist of trailer music meets your voice, that's where kind of cool magic things happen. I think David Edwards and John Hansen both excel at that. They have that sixth sense that has that ability to do that.
So, for the layman terminology out there, and if you want to touch on, take it down to the basic level. Tell us, because I'll hear the term a lot, and folks will ask me. So, an overlay. If you want to
Mm-hmm.
talk about what's an overlay, and you touched on trends a minute ago, because then you'll hear the term trailerization, taking a
Yeah.
cover and trailerizing it. So let's spend some time on that. Would love to learn more about it.
Yeah, so overlay and trailerizations can be very similar to each other, but kind of on the brass tacks of it, an overlay is going to be an additional master that is laid over an existing master to make it more applicable for trailers. So you'll see a lot of that when they'll use the original master of a song, but they need to punch it up with, a lot of times it's drums, action, percussion, things like that, building up the low end of it, bass pulses, and again, the infinite versions of how overlays are applied. And then the term trailerization is more taking a pre-existing song, potentially utilizing part of the original master, recreating part of the original master, and then building it into what is going to be a new piece of music that is purpose-built for trailers.
I see. Okay. Now, the connection, I always wanted to ask this question when it comes to yourself as a composer, and then you have the role of a music editor who might be going through a library. How's that dance work? Where does the creative concept come from? For, say, if there's a cover, who kind of leads that ship, if you will, saying, "Hey, let's go out and cover a Beatles tune or whatever artist."
Yeah,
How does that look?
Depends on how bad I want to fight that day.
And that's a massively collaborative process, right? There's definitely no one answer to that. It could be an editor that sees the cut of the film he's about to cut down, goes, "This is it. I got a vision." Talks to the supervisor, "Can you get a hold of someone to do this cover for me? And I think this person would be great for it." So then it comes down the line that way. There's also the way of, the composers are sitting with their creative brains on, hearing things and trying to potentially predict what's going to be usable. It's a lot more difficult to go that path. It can be more fun and inspiring sometimes, but I'd say the majority of those trailerizations and covers, especially in the modern day, customization with the STEM culture and everything being such fast turnarounds, customizations are all a part of almost every trailer sync outright. Very few just raw library pieces make it across the finish line. So the lines are hot for getting a composer on the phone to get them to do what the editor, the supervisor, the producer has a vision for. So, it comes from all directions, but I would say, if there was going to be one person solely responsible and we had to name it, the supervisor is coming up with a lot of those ideas, seeing what's going to fit for the project, and then shepherding both the producer, editor, and the composer side towards the end goal. But I'm sure there's people out there there's editors out there going, "No, it's all my idea."
No, but I can't say from a business standpoint, or at least from someone in my seat.
Yeah.
It is a very fine line to dance. You are making so many people happy at the same time. You need to make the studio happy. You need to make the original artist happy. You need to actually give people a target to shoot at. And I think that's kind of become the issue with trailerizations now, is because right now everybody's shooting in the dark, and people don't realize that you can, in theory, do have all the trailers, all the covers, all the things. Except for, you don't know if it's going to be a situation where whomever the original artist's estate is not into to violence in movies, and so something that they would normally clear on a regular basis, that thing your artist just spent 4 days on, there is no way it would have been cleared to begin with. I think that's become more in the publisher's sort of, this is your risk to reward situation. Because I think originally when it started, it was much easier to nail that down. Because now you have the custom aspect where that it's easier. But if you're not actively trying to seek out cool covers, and I dare say overlays,
right,
then you're not listening to your market either. So it has been a fine line to dance, because there are composers that love it,
Mm-hmm.
And there are composers that hate it. And it's because a lot of business things. Let's just touch on very basic ones. Number one, the composer very rarely owns anything, and so does the publisher. The publisher's giving, I mean, this is a service situation. And then there's usually an agreement that's set forth. Sometimes it's beneficial to do that. Sometimes it isn't. And then especially if you're, I mean, some of these customs, or I mean, you can spend months. So a lot of guys, at some point, you have to just understand the stamina of your creative and your artist, and you have to respect that from an agency level, and just say, "Hey, this is probably not the best way for us to go," and you can decline if you need to. I mean, I dare say 5 years ago we didn't say no to anything. And you probably had to say I hated saying no. And now it's kind of one of those things where it's like sometimes we have to.
Yes.
Because it will get passed, it will live on. The customizations have become more and more because everyone wants their signature sound or their signature element on it, and rightly so. But that also means that composer has to really love this piece of music, because it continues to come back in his life. It's like if you're Britney Spears and you have to continue to sing "Hit Me, Baby, One More Time" for 30 years. I'm just kidding. I'm sorry. She absolutely has to continue. But you know what I'm saying? That can become problematic. And so business side is always a very fine line to dance, because if you're not doing it, you're not doing the right thing. If you are doing it, make sure that you're making everybody comfortable, and you're preparing and getting everybody in line, and your communication is on point. No gatekeeping. Everybody gets to talk to everybody.
Great points there. And I think, Wendy and Kyle, you guys touched on it briefly. And for as long as you've both been in the business, let's talk about the impact of streamers, how it's impacted the marketing of trailers, and ultimately, the budgets for trailers. They were much more lucrative, I would imagine, pre-streaming. And what's that landscape look like?
I think Wendy will have a much more detailed answer to that question, but I think my kind of 30,000-foot view of it is that streaming, well, I think the pandemic, we all knew streaming was coming, obviously, right? The pandemic let streaming take complete power overnight, and that was a massive, paradigm shift for everybody. And now you have this kind of streaming culture that wasn't based so much on tent poles and big summer releases and Christmas Day releases, but it was, we're going to put out X amount of films per month, and that's going to give us the commercial edge to get more subscribers. So a lot of movies were being made, and with the more movies being made, the marketing budget was stretched thinner and thinner. So that was reflected in our budgets. There was a time where it was kind of like a little bit more work for a little bit less money kind of thing, because but then the culture of how people are advertising movies is continually changing, and I think it does move in a pendulum, and so we will see a pendulum return. But there was a time, we still live in it. Netflix isn't making trailers for every film they put out, which is completely fine and acceptable. But there was a time that there's no way that would happen. That you had to run a multiple trailer campaign for your film to get out on all sorts of different outlets, including theatrical, which is obviously since the pandemic been kind of in a new era of how theaters are approached and used in putting movies out to the public.
This is another one that we could go, like, you could have your own panel on this. I'll say it like this. You cannot blame the studios. Okay, let me back up. Let's do a little bit of music of trailer advertising, or advertising and broadcasting 101.
Okay.
What people didn't realize is, for the longest time, I dare say, since broadcasting existed, their viewing was completely subsidized by advertising. They didn't have to worry about it. And then all of a sudden they started getting these, hey, I might not get my ESPN because the advertising situation isn't going to be worked out. It isn't going to be worked out. And then all of a sudden, streaming has started to take a very real role in how we saw things just simply from expense. I'm going to keep this to 2 minutes. So now you have a situation where what was once subsidized for the studios is no longer subsidized for the studios, and they got to figure it out on their own. You're watching that real time, but it absolutely has an impact on the budgets of the projects in which they produce. We, as their clients, have to see that and respect it, and to some degree adhere to that. We also have to say, okay, we can accept that to a certain extent. I still have, my job is still to represent my artists and my composers.
Yes.
So that being said, are there going to be less rates than we're used to? Yes. Do they come back? Yes. I like to tell my team, it's not that the dollars have left. It is that they have moved. Let's find them. Still have to market. People are still marketing.
Yeah.
People are still consuming. And as long as people are consuming, we will still have a job. Now, here's from the trailer standpoint and from the actual theatrical standpoint, because that's really what people want to know. But we actually have to wrap our heads around and accept is that it's not that trailers are going away. The opportunities for a trailer and maybe the definition of a trailer will change soon.
Yes.
We were talking about this earlier when, I dare say pre-pandemic, you could go to any movie theater anytime you wanted to, take your kids, because this is where it hits me. Take your kids, go with your husband, find something to watch. And now it's probably been we have to be strategic about what movie we go plan to see. And they're sold out, which is good.
Yeah.
And you're taking, this is where the theaters will never leave. When you take children away from their distractions, they are fully immersed in the movie experience.
Yeah.
That's why Mufasa does well. That's why Minecraft does well.
Yes.
Because if I had them sit there and watch it in my living room, it would not have the same impact. And so they're not leaving.
Yes.
Everything will actually have some sort of homeostasis. It hasn't left. Where did it go? Because it's still here.
Yeah.
And then we have to acquiesce to whatever that is in that range. So I know that's sort of a convoluted answer, but the thing is, you're not going to we're still going to need music. It's just, let's go find where they need it.
Where they need it. And I think that's a great segue, because I saw a clip actually the other day that was basically addressing that the real threat to film, television, entertainment is social media, things like TikTok. And I think the statistic that came out was, on average, whether it's Gen Z or whatever segment of the demo you want to take, they spend about 90 minutes on TikTok. And that's irrespective of if you're at a theatrical release, when something comes out, they're consuming it. So let's open it up, because I've been also hearing on that side of it, it's a great time, because maybe the long form film as we know it, because I'm a father of 2 under 5. So my wife and I, we don't have time unless we're watching a kid's film, to your point, Wendy. But our films or shows, maybe it's a 20-minute short. I mean, what's that paradigm look like? And especially with social media, being able to consume media on our laptop, our phone, you name it, in the car. What's kind of what are your thoughts there as we move forward? And then we've got Tubi, we've got Roku has a channel, all these other channels for content to come out on.
It could be its own panel, I promise.
Yeah.
But no, go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think that there's like that kind of it obviously took some things away from the theatrical aspect of movies, but it didn't destroy them outright. And it's different experiential things that you get for the different viewing environments, right? So
Yeah.
I think that, the experience of going to a theater will always be that, and there will always be a market for that. Therefore, there will always be marketing movies in that way. That's what we all came up doing. What we really do love doing, the streaming, the small screen kind of stuff, is going to be now additional media that will have to be marketed. And I think right now we're in the Wild West of them trying to figure out how they're going to market all of it. Because for a while it was so novel that you were kind of able to get away with kind of what I was mentioning before. Like, hey, we just have a bunch of new stuff. Come check it out. And I think, and I might be wrong, but that the general public's kind of getting fatigued with the, like, I don't care that there's 15 new movies this week. I want to know what's really good and I want to go see it. And so it's kind of where we're in this readjustment period of figuring out how to market for a much larger swath of viewing experiences.
And from a macro standpoint, I think that's how everyone, even from the major level executive experiences,
Yeah.
you're finding that whatever you put out needs to be a single. They're not putting out much albums anymore. Like, because that, as much as that argument can be had later, but especially when it comes in the marketing realm,
Yeah.
we almost, to a certain extent, although I will get in trouble if I actually say it like this, we almost write to the movie in the sense like, wait a second. Okay, so if this is what's coming out and you have a macro version of what is coming out, then how can we attack this? How can we attack this from a marketing level and try to stay on the like the edge of sounds? Because here's what everybody's actually trying to say without saying. They need you in 3 seconds for somebody to go, wait, what? That's all they need you to do, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Whether it's a liquid death can that looks like a tall boy, whether it's like a scream at the beginning of a 3-second, whether it's this is when your trailer begins. They need you to be like, what happens?
Yeah.
What was that? And if you can translate that musically,
Yeah.
you're already a step ahead than most people in the marketing space musically.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Wendy, because I had some producers in on a listening session with some songwriters, and he eloquently put that, we're so in tune with a singer's voice. And like you said, the first thing we hear when we hear a song is, and I'll go back to whether it's Bono and U2 or Mick Jagger, Rolling Stones. What is that connection with the singer? What is it, that emotion? And really making sure when you mix a record that the voice, the vocals, that is the star of the track. And sometimes less is more. With all the choices folks can have with plugins, they get paralyzed by all these choices when they're putting out a track. But go back to basics. And I think earlier, both you, Kyle and Wendy, you touched on what are other ways to monetize one's music. We talked about sync. If you're a composer, we haven't talked about if you want to spend some time on music libraries and blanket deals, because that's still, I think there's still, for our listeners, there's a lot of mystery on libraries and those types of deals, and how if you're starting out as a composer, because I always get that question, is how do I break
when you need an MWA?
Yeah, exactly.
Because I'm going to tell all you boutique guys out there that they're like, and Kyle and I both, we have collectively 100+ albums, which I mean puts us right around the 1,000 Q mark.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
We still have a hard time getting blankets. Let me tell you why. It does not behoove them to blanket a library that they can't utilize in multitude of avenues or multitude of mediums. And now that's so many. So if you're going to go blanket and you're a boutique and you're just starting out, that will be a very difficult endeavor. It's best to just partner with a major in that scenario. Now, what people a lot of times get very confused is with a pre-negotiated rate and with a blanket. So we can get like into the licensing weeds on that, because you and I know the difference, in the sense that a blanket is that whatever production entity that you have an agreement with, be that a studio or a production company, they're going to pay you a lump sum so that they can use your music for that year or whatever your deal is for. And it doesn't matter what they use, they're going to use it. It is already paid for. They'll pay you on the back end. Now, a pre-negotiated rate is, hey, you keep having to come back to me with quotes. Why? We're obviously using each other and we obviously have a great business relationship. This is the rate that we can negotiate so that we don't have to keep doing this dance. They know their budget. You know your work. So you can pre-negotiate to how you want to do that. Now, I would say that you need to understand to pre-negotiate means don't stick to your high-end guns. That is not going to serve you well. But that is, if you are starting out and you are a boutique, do not walk into any clearance offices and say that you want a blanket. You won't get it. You don't have enough music. So go in and ask for a pre-negotiated rate. And that's if you actually have a license. If you don't have a license, do not walk into a studio's office and ask for a pre-negotiated rate. Have some history. And I promise the music supervisors that help you get there will want to land. And I knowing this community, everybody's going to help you guide that way. But I just want that to actually be cleared up, because I have that conversation with composers on a regular basis. And I just want them like, wait, let's back up for a second so you know the difference and why it's important. Difference between a high-end boutique and someone that would be more of a major label, large sum of production music covering a lot of genres.
Well said. I mean, that in itself we will highlight on the playback, because I think you really cleared things up there, Wendy, and I really appreciate so many times being able to have that information and understand it completely is really difficult out there with all the noise. So what's in store for the rest of the year when it comes to, Masterworks Alliance, as far as trailers? Is there any one thing that really excites you? I know there are probably NDAs, things you can't speak about, but I'll turn that to you, Kyle.
Yeah, we're on both 12 Titans and Confidential are on a production schedule right now. So we're kind of, that engine's always turning, and we're always in development for our library releases that go out. So those are kind of our spaces to kind of stretch out and really have the time to create interesting things. So those are fun to get to be a part of and work on. And then we actually just confirmed our first outside signing of the two companies. Imagine Music is on our roster. So and we're just about 2 months old now, so we are still very, very young in this as Masterworks Alliance. So we're looking towards the horizon to expanding our roster, but we're not in any massive rush to it, and just kind of seeing how the engine works as we turn it on. And it's been a pretty awesome last 2 months, and kind of looking forward to we haven't had many kinks to work out, to be honest, but kind of figuring out how it's all.
I mean, we have had kinks, please. Everybody's had kinks this year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's true. Relative kinks, I should say. Yeah, exactly. Not relatively large. Yeah.
Right.
No, I mean, I think. Listen, I think that with every bad there is a good, if you will. And so that's what I'm trying to seek.
Yeah.
And so not to date myself, but I was, coming up actually in the in social media music and kind of figuring out how that has played such a huge element and how many landscapes in the last 20 years have changed so many times. And the beautiful part is that there are so many other aspects that no one is actually seeing because it's not mainstream. The beautiful part about now, and I think especially marketing, is that we're having a very real shift from a macro level to a real micro, to the point where you're really able to have a direct contact with your audience and make real money. Whereas when I was raised in the music industry, that was unheard of.
Yeah.
And so you actually get to forge a path, whatever that may be, TikTok, YouTube, social media. If you actually do get a traditional license, if you or a traditional deal, like there are so many paths to take.
Yeah.
And we can get like, oh my gosh, everything's changing, AI is taking over, when I'm like, well, it is and it isn't, but okay, let's not even worry about it at this point. Let's just kind of like continue down this road and get creativity back and get everybody inspired again.
Yeah.
Because I want everyone to shut out the noise and realize that there's still a very real room for creativity that is profitable, and we can find it.
Totally agree. And
Agree completely, yeah.
to bookend that and touching on briefs that I see from music supervisors, I'm seeing more repetition where they'll even say, back to real, authentic artist with, in this particular brief was saying, no synthesizers. We want acoustic guitars. We want real. And I'm starting to see that more in bold from supervisors. And like you said, going back to a time, Wendy and Kyle, of, when I was coming up in the 90s, my sister listening to James Taylor, Crosby, Stills and Nash, Led Zeppelin. The storytelling, I worked at Capitol in the 90s, but the Beatles' White Album, music at best, it should be a journey. It should take us somewhere. And now, like you said, Wendy, the challenge, it's singles driven. Folks are listening to music on their phone. So I want to touch briefly before we wrap. Sonic quality. I experienced a band we're working with the record in Dolby Atmos, and the music took me somewhere. And I'm curious, with Theatrical, what would that take for a theatrical film to be put out in Dolby Atmos?
Hang on, I'm just going to give 2 seconds of my thought, because this is going to be a Kyle question. All I can say is, especially now when you're just considering like taking it down to its least common denominator, if you have least amount of opportunity, please understand that even now your production has to be at the most on point, like across the board.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. The Atmos thing is cool, and so in the trailer world, that's happening at the dub stage typically for us. So most of the time, our STEM, everything, like I've kind of mentioned before, STEM culture is completely, that is how the trailer music industry runs. And so our stems are going, and it's the dub mixers that are splitting them out into the Atmos environment. And so though we do have some opportunities to do Atmos stuff out of the gate, most of our stuff, we're still living a 2-channel world. Although, and it kind of goes back to what we were saying about the different experiential ways to intake art now. Atmos is just another one of them. And you have the sound bars that can do it, these at-home systems. Obviously Apple Music is doing their spatial audio stuff. So I think that at the end of the day, music is a type of communication, right? So it's got to convey this emotion. And it can do it, the Beatles did it with 1 channel kind of thing. And now you have 128 when you're in Atmos, and both are equally valid for telling a story or making you feel a certain way. So it's just, it's kind of more opportunities to do, to get your message across.
Exciting times ahead, and we'll see what plays out there. And to end it on a fun note, what's on repeat on your playlist? Assuming you have time to take in music for pleasure at the time in the current state of affairs. I'm curious, Kyle, is there anything that you're really checking out right now?
With Lizzie McAlpine's new album, and was it Growing Older? I'm gonna get the album name wrong, right? Mason Stoops produced it. That caught me. That I enjoyed that. That's been on my playlist recently for sure.
Very nice. I haven't heard that record. I'll have to check that one
very,
out.
Very good. Yeah, I like Lizzie McAlpine. Yeah, she's great.
I can't listen. Okay. Faith Hill's greatest hits. Yes, Faith.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yes,
Hey.
Faith. Yes, girl, Mississippi girl. I got you. I got you.
A classic. No, deep cat. And it was funny because just to wrap it is, Kate running up the hill. Kate Bush with the sync use. What the power of a sync and what it can do for an evergreen and a back catalog of an artist. That is why we love the industry we work in, and there could be a big, huge Faith Hill sync tomorrow, and all of a sudden, what it does for the catalog of an artist. But
well, I mean, can we actually, we were talking about this yesterday because we were having a kid discussion. My kids just found Nirvana. Right, I haven't even had I don't even have the heart to tell them that Kurt Cobain is dead. Right. They are stoked as if this happened yesterday. They have no idea. So I mean, all bets are off. This is not anything that we've ever experienced. I wake up to an entire A&R staff every day. Absolutely.
That is, yeah. And then if they find vinyl or if we had a 8-track promo from, they're like, what's this? You're like, that's how music was consumed or a cassette, dare I say. But no, exciting times. And it's the comeback of vinyl for all of the collectors. I think they were saying the percentage of sales of vinyl eclipsing other I'll have to pull up the numbers, but it's back to basics, if you will, and we will fingers crossed on getting to the other side of things. But Wendy and Kyle, I like the optimism.
Shout out to T-Bone Burnett, because no one is more stoked that the kids are going back to vinyl than that man. I promise you that.
Yes, well said, well said. But Wendy and Kyle, thank you so much for taking the time out, and really appreciate the wealth of information you shared today on the Masterworks Alliance and everything you're working on. And here's to much success throughout the year, and here's to the rest of the year. And I appreciate you guys coming on by.
Thank you so much for having us, Charles.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
It was
we hope to be back.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. Like you said, Wendy, there's so many topics. It could be a panel. And thanks, guys, for tuning in. Catch you guys next week on the next episode of Sync Riffs. And until then, namaste.
Go.